Signal versus noise, part 2. How constant input fragments attention. Many people today feel mentally scattered. They struggle to focus the way they once did. Their attention jumps from one thing to another. Even when they try to slow down, their minds feel crowded. Because of this, many people believe something is wrong with them. They believe they lack discipline, motivation, or strength. But in many cases, the issue is not simply the individual, it's the environment. We are now living inside a system that constantly competes for our attention. Every notification, headline, video clip, argument, and algorithm is designed to pull the mind in a new direction. Over time, this constant input can fragment attention and make it harder for people to think clearly. When we think about today in this world, we are faced with different messages that helps create and feed a narrative. These narratives serves larger forces at work. We must retain our freedom to choose based on the information that has signal without the noise. This is where the idea of signal versus noise becomes important. Signal versus noise. Signal is the information that helps us understand reality clearly. Noise is the flood of distraction, stimulation, emotional triggers, and conflicting messages that make reality harder to interpret. The problem today is not that information exists. The problem is that useful information is now mixed with an endless stream of distraction. Important ideas are surrounded by outrage, repetition, entertainment, arguments, and manipulation. As a result, many people are simply not informed. They are overloaded. This is by design to fracture their thinking. Did you know that major media is now owned by 6 companies? What constant input does to the mind? When the brain is exposed to nonstop stimulation, several changes can begin to occur. Attention becomes fragmented. Instead of following one idea deeply, the mind starts jumping from stimulus to stimulus. Emotional energy gets drained. A person may feel mentally exhausted, even if they have not done anything physically demanding. Thinking becomes shallower. Reflection is replaced by reaction. And perhaps most importantly, inner clarity weakens. It becomes harder to tell which thoughts are truly your own and which ones were triggered by something you saw online or heard repeatedly. This affects not only productivity, but judgment, identity, and emotional stability. Why this matters. A distracted mind is easier to influence. A tired mind is easier to steer. When large numbers of people are overwhelmed with noise, it becomes harder for society to think carefully about important issues. People react more quickly, they argue more intensely, and they struggle to find shared understanding. With shared understanding, we can make better decisions as a whole. This is why the difference between signal versus noise matters. It is not only about personal focus, it's about collective clarity. The first line of defense. The first step is awareness. Once people recognize that the environment itself is shaping attention, they can begin to respond differently. They can slow down. They can question what truly deserves their attention. They can reduce unnecessary input. And they can begin rebuilding the ability to think deeply and clearly. The goal is not to know everything. The goal really is to protect your clarity. Why this matters. When information is concentrated in a small number of organizations, the range of perspectives people can see narrow. This doesn't mean every story is false, but it does mean the public may only see certain angles of complex events. Understanding how information flows helps people ask better questions and think critically. This didn't happen overnight. Media consolidation accelerated after regulatory changes in the 1980s, and especially after the Telecommunications Act of 1996. These policies allowed large corporations to purchase many smaller outlets, leading to the concentration that we see today. How to protect yourself. When consuming news, it's important to check multiple sources, pay attention to who owns the outlet, and look for information that was gathered closest to the source. For example, accredited researchers or published documents by an institute, a trusted institute. The goal is not distrust of everything, but awareness of how information is structured. When you see the structure of how information is used, your clarity increases. When clarity increases, you are able to make better decisions. In a world filled with constant stimulation, attention becomes a valuable resource, and clarity becomes something that must be protected. Learning to separate signal versus noise may become one of the most important skills of an era, because in an environment built to scatter your attention, clarity becomes a form of self defense.